Welcome to Silberman Law Firm's Weekly Docket, episode 20, where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is May 30th, 2024. I'm your host and owner of the firm, Phil Silberman, and Austin Black is my co-host who works in our Dallas office. How are you doing today, Austin?
Doing great. The Mavs are in the conference playoffs, and I'm hoping they can make everyone in Minnesota quite disappointed this evening. So,
especially the ones that got those tattoos in Minnesota.
Especially those. Now, I will say, though, Naz Reid has actually really impressed me. He's been the one that's been playing the best at this entire thing, so he may have been a better player than we were leading on.
Well, if you really want the Mavs to win, you'll need to get a Luka Doncic tattoo on your forearm.
I'm good.
Don't want it that bad. What's on our docket today, Mr. Black?
So today, in our legal news section, we're going to first be talking about the families of the children who were killed in the Uvalde mass shooting. They sued the makers of Call of Duty games, stating that I guess their games had some sort of influence promoting mass shootings. And then we're going to be talking about people coming into marathons when they don't pay to run in the marathon, and they just join in and they run with everyone all the way through, and then they get to the end, they're like, woo, I won. They're like, but you didn't pay, you don't have a number on you. Or they wrote like a number in crayon on their shirt. We'll talk exactly about what happens when that occurs, and then we'll move on to our legal question section. First being, can Texas employers monitor employee emails and internet usage? And then, do home sellers have to disclose a death in the house when they're selling said house? And then lastly, our rant and rave section, we'll be talking about book bans in Texas. Bans for right reasons, bans for wrong reasons. Maybe you think all bans are wrong. We'll talk about what that looks like right now in Texas. So,
all right. I'm excited for the show. Got a lot of great topics here. Let's kick it off with our legal news section. The first one being the Uvalde families suing the maker of Call of Duty over influencing the mass shooting. Are you a gamer, Austin? Do you play any games?
I much less now than in my teens and early 20s, but I did. I have played some Call of Duty games in the past. So
okay. I've never played it. I've seen it. It's a very violent game that simulates warfare. Is that generally correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let me give our listeners some history on the Uvalde shooting. May 24th, 2022, tragic mass shooting. 18-year-old gunman Salvador Ramos goes to Robb Elementary, which is an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. It's some distance west of San Antonio in a very rural, deserty, dry area in Texas. Goes to Robb Elementary, shoots and kills 19 students and 2 teachers, wounds 17 others, and the shooter was later killed by law enforcement, but not soon enough. Tragically, before the shooter was taken down, all of those students, elementary school students and 2 teachers were murdered. So 376 law enforcement officers showed up at the school. And Austin, for reference, that's more that defended the Alamo. A sizable force here. And they all failed to immediately engage the shooter.
And not only that, they stopped parents from going in, right?
I think that's tragic.
So shameful.
And one of the most prominent school shootings was the Columbine shooting in 1999, another tragic shooting. And there were studies done regarding that shooting, and there came a doctrine sort of out of those studies, and the conventional wisdom from that school shooting dictated that officers must immediately confront the shooter. And that's the best way to save lives. And they failed to do that. There was a Texas House committee that was appointed later to investigate this failure and figure out where everything went awry, where everything went wrong. And this is from the Texas House Committee report. Austin, do you have that quote there?
Yeah. So they said in the report, quote, They, meaning the police officers and first responders, failed to prioritize saving the lives of innocent victims over their own safety.
Yeah, and that's a sad statement on what happened there. Regardless, those lives were lost, and the parents are upset, and they're looking for answers, and they're looking for recourse. So they've sued Activision, who makes Call of Duty, this video game, and alleges that those games condition players, especially young males, to see guns as solutions to problems. They specifically mentioned that this shooter, Salvador Ramos, was influenced by playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare and its mobile version since he was 15 years old.
So
those are the allegations.
Call of Duty, actually, some parts of Call of Duty have been controversial for a while. The most controversial thing that has come out from these games in recent years, the last 10 years, is in Modern Warfare 2, there was a mission called No Russian, where you are playing as I believe an undercover CIA operative, and you go to this airport in Berlin, and you perpetuate a mass shooting. Like, the player can choose whether to participate in it or not, right? If they can shoot or not. But you're there, and they're just mowing down innocent civilians.
You're basically role-playing a horrific, murderous mass shooting event. Yeah, poor taste. But
yeah.
Now these parents, so they sue Activision, Call of Duty maker. They also sue Meta, and Meta owns Instagram and Facebook. And they accused Meta's logarithms of pushing gun images and violent videos to this shooter, Salvador Ramos. They say that he was on his social media accounts, allegedly encountered aggressive firearm making. So Meta's business interests are to keep people on the platform longest. So whatever you're into, that's what they're going to show you.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously this kid's into guns, and they're just showing them guns. And the parents of these victims at the Uvalde shooting are saying, that's a problem. Meta, you had a duty not to incite violence. Company response, Activision's response is, we express condolences and their sympathy, but they pointed out that millions play their games without committing violence. The parents also sue 92 Texas Department of Public Safety officers. And that, in my mind, when you think about the video games and you think about Meta, those allegations are a bit more tenuous, because you'll see we really don't have legal precedent for that kind of thing. But suing the officers, the fact that report came out, they failed to act, they failed to follow a training protocol. You can see a direct cause to the DPS officers' inaction and actually what occurred.
Yeah.
What do you think about the potential liability of the video game in Meta Austin as far as that goes?
I think it'll be really hard to establish liability there.
And to your point, we did the research prior to the show. There have been no successful lawsuits that we could find holding any video game companies or TV shows or movies liable for violent behavior. There was a U.S. Supreme Court case, Brown v. Entertainment Merchants Association, and California instituted a law banning the sale of violent video games to minors, and the U.S. Supreme Court struck that down as unconstitutional, violating First Amendment rights. The cause of action against the family, or cause of action against Activision and Meta, probably is a long shot. The DPS officers, that's going to be tough as well, because police officers in Texas are protected under something called qualified immunity, which protects government officials from being held personally liable as long as they're in the scope of their duties and their actions don't clearly violate established constitutional law. In this case, the officers were certainly cowardly, but I don't know that they did anything to really violate anyone's constitutional rights. And then trying to overcome qualified immunity is going to be tough. So I'm not certain that this lawsuit is going to get much traction, but it's out there and it's been filed. I will say this, there's nothing good about video games, I think, are a real problem for our youth. I've got a report here released by the American Psychological Association And this is a quote from their report, showing a consistent relation between violent video game use and increases in aggression, aggressive behavior, aggressive cognitions, and aggressive affect, and decreases in prosocial behavior, empathy, and sensitivity to aggression. So there's some evidence that these games are a problem. Maybe China has it right. China's an authoritative regime, and they've got a law in China. You're under 18 years old. Gaming companies can only offer 1 hour of services to minors between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, as well as on public holidays.
I'd say, parents, be aware of what your children are playing, first for the content, and then also just be aware of like how it can influence their, I guess, demeanor and their approach to life, because it can be important.
There's a real problem, and I think it's more of a problem among young men than it is among young women. But
definitely,
we'll keep an eye on that case. Let's move on to our next legal news piece, which is Bandit debate in running races. So there's this growing issue of marathons and half marathons around the country. They're all over. You've got the Houston Marathon, Boston Marathon, all over. And what happens is these races are organized and people pay a fee to run in them, and they're events. And I didn't know this, but Austin, what's going on is someone wants to run in the race, but they don't want to pay. So they just go and start running. They just jump right in there and they start running, and they've gone as far as making you have a bib. Austin, you're not a marathon runner, I presume.
No, I'm not a marathon runner. No.
Okay, I don't run marathons either. It's really bad on my knees, so don't do it. But the way it works, you're in a race, you get a bib with a number on it, and there's official ones, and people are just like printing these things out at home, and some of them look really amateur. And they put it on, and I'm number 25. You pick a number and you start running. And the people running these events, one of the guys is Frankie Ruiz, and this is I think it's in Miami marathon, and he's got this thing called Bandit Reels, and I guess it's on his social media account, where he goes and confronts these people that are illegally or running in the race, and he confronts them, and some of them have actually won. Some of them have crossed the finish line, and they're given a medal or whatever, and he'll go and that's a fake bib, and he'll rip the medal off.
This guy sounds like he should get a life, to be completely honest, but
yeah, we've got some quotes from an article. One guy's, "Oh, my bib, it fell off, bro. It fell off." One guy pretended he had the bib under the jacket, and Frankie's like, "Where's your bib?" And he lifts the jacket off, and there's no bib. So
I feel like this is in the same category as those people who go around like the stolen valor people. Like whenever they see someone wearing military fatigues, like, no, you weren't really in that thing.
Yeah, I don't know, but race banditry has a rich history. Bobby Gibb, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, crashed it in 1966. When women couldn't register for the Boston Marathon.
That's a very good reason to do that.
Frankie and his racing friends say bandits can create problems for race organizers, overcrowding, safety concerns, inaccurate race results. Entry fees are critical for covering costs like permits, police presence, medical support, and amenities. So it's also illegal, Austin. We have something in Texas in the Penal Code section 31.04. It's a theft of services.
What services are being provided? You are allowing me to run.
Well, it's sporting events. You get it. Well, and when I was a kid, kids would go to movies and you pay for one show and then you stay for a second show.
Yep.
That's essentially a theft of services. There's also some other examples. We've got this guy, Dion Rich, known as the greatest Super Bowl gate crasher ever, managed to sneak into 35 Super Bowls over several decades.
Nice. That's impressive.
It's illegal in Texas. What are the elements of the theft of services in the Penal Code?
Under Texas Penal Code 31.04 is you need to intentionally or knowingly secure services by deception, threat, or false token with the intent to avoid payment. So those are the three elements.
Well, and that probably fits if you crash a marathon. So the services you're getting are the ability to participate in the race. And the deception is the fake bib or just sneaking through the lines.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wonder, okay, if you run it and at the finish line, you're like, hey, by the way, I didn't pay for this. Don't put me on the official results or anything like that. You don't take anything. Are you really taking services?
There's a big debate. There was a big social media influencer, and she crashed the marathon, ran it, and crossed the finish line. And many of her followers commented, no, you can't cross the finish line. That's where you've quite literally gone over the line. So you did this. That's the rule for these race bandits. Yeah. You don't go over the finish line. But if you just run it and then stop short, you're good. So
yeah. Okay.
Still probably a theft of services. All right. Let's answer some legal questions now. And the first legal question we have is, can Texas employers monitor employee emails and internet usage?
Yes.
So, yes. And there's a federal law, there's a Texas law, generally allows employees to monitor usage. I'll tell you what our firm does and what many companies do, and I think, Austin, you know about this, is we issue a firm laptops or a company laptop. We tell our employees in their new hire manual that we call it productivity software. Productivity software sounds a little bit better than, hey, we're going to track you. So we guise it in, we want to make you productive, which it does, but we put it on the computer. We disclose it to the employees. We can see what an employee does on the computer. Federal law is the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, permits monitoring. Texas law centers around privacy expectations. So the idea, Austin, is if we're giving you a firm laptop and we're telling you that it's being monitored, you really have no privacy expectations in that regard. Texas law specifically centers around the tort of invasion of privacy. And Austin, do you have those two elements for us for what constitutes an invasion of privacy?
Yeah, in Texas, it's an intentional intrusion, physically or otherwise, so here would be digitally, upon another's solitude, seclusion, or private affairs or concerns, which, this is the second element, would be highly offensive to a reasonable person.
Yeah. So the classic example, and we have a real estate practice as well, so we get calls where these neighbors will stick a camera up and face the camera over their neighbor's yard. Yeah. That's obviously an invasion of privacy. That would be offensive to me if I can't even use my backyard. Yeah. Now, one of the common misconceptions, though, about this is people believe that the employer must disclose this. Like you have to tell your employees that you're using tracking software. That's actually not the case. The way the law works in Texas is if you're an employer and you choose to disclose it, it bolsters your case that the employee would have no expectation of privacy because you're telling the employee, expect to have any privacy on this thing. Don't look at anything you wouldn't want us to look at. That kills any expectation of privacy. If you don't tell the employee that, a reasonable person would probably think, Austin, if our firm didn't tell you, would you assume that we could look at your firm laptop? Yes, probably.
I mean, even if you didn't have tracking software, I would assume that there could be because of what I've done with a lot of non-compete litigation. I would assume that at any time I could be told to preserve everything on my laptop and turn it over. So, yeah.
Now, there are exceptions to this. Yeah. Even if it is a company laptop, the employer probably shouldn't be looking and tracking like your personal email. So if you have almost all personal email is web-based. If you log into your personal Gmail account, the employer definitely should not be able to keystroke your passwords and be able to get into that just because you accessed it on a company machine. That's going over the line.
Withdrawing all of your bank account balance. That was
not good. So have you heard Chris Heald? For our listeners who don't know, Chris is the number 2 guy at the firm and excellent attorney. He's the supervising attorney for the firm. And Chris always, because I'm a big data guy, Chris does not love data as much as I do. And he makes fun of my productivity software. And they all have woodpeckers. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they put the wooden woodpecker on their desk and it just goes up and down and hits the key and it makes the productivity software think that everybody is working. So he's like, your productivity software is all junk. So I just got an email today, Austin, and I'm telling you specifically. All right. Be careful now. Do you know what a mouse jigger is?
I do know what a mouse jigger is. Yes, it's very strange, but yes, I know what it is.
Okay, I didn't know what it was, but it's a motion to trick if you're trying to trick the productivity software into thinking that you're working when you're not, you're just like, I don't know, playing on your phone and you're just like randomly jiggering your mouse.
Yeah.
Okay. The software can now detect mouse jiggers.
There was someone that I think it was the Washington Post did a article on who had like 3 remote engineering jobs, right?
Okay.
And he was using one of those, the ones that he wasn't working on at the time. He was using that, and the guy was making like $250 a year.
Just off mouse jiggers.
It's crazy.
That guy, he's done.
Stick
a fork in him. We've got anti-mouse jiggering protections now. All right, next. What's our next legal question, Mr. Black?
If you are selling a house and you have had or you are aware of an unfortunate expiration, a death in the house, do you have to disclose that to the potential buyer? Okay.
So sellers have to fill out a form. It's called a seller's disclosure. It's under Texas Property Code Section 5.008. It lists specific things that you need to fill out.
Yeah.
And the answer to this is you generally do not have to disclose deaths caused by natural causes, suicides, or accidents unrelated to the condition of the property.
Yeah.
So the only thing you have to disclose if it's an accident related to the condition of the property, say someone fell off a balcony and died, or say someone fell through a floor or something like that, then you do have to disclose that. So that's the answer to that question. Yep. That's pretty short and straightforward type of deal. And this always brings us to my favorite section of the show, our rants and rave section. And today we're talking about the state of Texas banning books. And who bans more books, us or the Nazis? And I think it's going to be close. I think the Nazis just burned a bunch of books, which is the
is that really banning or is it just burning?
Right.
Like, do they really have to ban them if they don't exist?
Right. No, I don't think we're burning any books in Texas yet, but we've got some data here, some statistics for the fall semester of 2022 in our public school system. The state of Texas has banned 438 books, number 1 book banning state in the country.
Nice.
Significantly more than the number 2 position, the state of Florida, banned 357. And then this one was a shocker. I just don't think of Missouri as a big place for banning books, but 315 books banned. And then it drops off a cliff. And then you're down to Utah at 109. I'm guessing that's a Mormon thing.
Yeah.
Would be my guess. But still, the Mormons are way behind Texas and the Southern Baptist or the Bible Belt or whatever we're doing down here. But so we ban a lot of books. There was actually a law. It was House Bill 900, but House Bill 900 was passed and signed into law. And the idea was going to restrict library books. It was going to require the booksellers to read every book and rate it before it went into the public schools. And it was based on sexual content. That went up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Fifth Circuit said, no, you can't do that, overturn that law.
And if the Fifth Circuit is saying you can't do something that's conservative, you know it's really pushing the line.
Yeah, and for our listeners out there, the Fifth Circuit is out in New Orleans. Yeah. It's the most conservative
of the appeals courts,
of the federal courts. We've got a list of books. So this is Katy. I don't know if you know Katy, Austin, but Katy is a big school district west of Houston. And they've banned 14 new titles, and I don't have all of them, but some of them caught my eye. Implemented a policy exempting cartoon butts, and that's buttock, like bottoms, okay? It's like you said, no nudity unless it's a cartoon butt, and those have to be removed. But here are some of the books they banned. And also, I'm going to go through these, and I'm going to ask you your opinion on them, and if you think that'll get banned. Okay. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Now, this was a book written, I think, in the 1970s. It's a book about an adolescent girl who wants to get her period, and she stops talking to God and then struggles with her religious identity. And then on the last day of school, Margaret gets her period and she's so relieved. She resumes a relationship with God. And she says, I know you're there, God. I know you wouldn't have missed this for anything. Thank you, God. This is an awful lot. Yeah, okay. It's so weird. Austin's maybe we should have asked one of the female attorneys in our firm to do this. You and I are both like staring at each other.
I mean, really? This just sounds like a stupid book. I don't think it should be banned. It just sounds really stupid.
Yeah. So just my Jewish background under Levitical and Old Testament law, that the menstruation would cause women to be considered to be unclean, and then they had to go outside of the camp. And I believe that's how we got the red tent. They called that the red tent.
Yeah, the weird. Go for it. Yeah, I don't think it should ban because of being weird.
All right, next one on the list: Memoirs of a Geisha. Have you read it, Austin?
I've not. It's on my list, but I've not read it. No.
Okay, I went to a fancy private school in Houston. They required us to read this. I think my junior year of high school.
Yeah.
And I was repulsed. I don't know how old I was as a junior, senior, 16, 17 years old. There's a graphic scene where a geisha, I don't know how to describe it, like a call girl in Japan, or maybe like a dancer.
I would say it's closer to like our modern concept of an escort.
Okay.
Like a very high-class escort. Like those might be conflicting statements, but yes.
Japanese escort, and what these Japanese men would do is they would bid on who gets to take their virginity. And there's this very graphic scene of, I think the guy's name is Dr. Crab in the book. Some doctor pays for the virginity, and there's a graphic sexual scene, and it's somewhere between like prostitution, rape, and a medical exam. So like a gynecologist visit. So I am still to this day, I can't unread it.
Also, I mean, I don't know. I don't think if you have someone named Dr. Crab, I think like your chances of an STD there might be really high.
Oh my goodness! Right. We may have to edit that one out. I don't know if our producers are going to listen to that.
Okay, but as far for this
ban or no ban,
I think for schools below high school ban.
Yeah, absolutely.
High school, I think should still be allowed, but below high school ban.
I was in high school and I was scarred for life. Okay. All right. Now, this book is actually one of my favorite, No David. And this is a short children's book about a mischievous child who's always getting into trouble. And his mother is saying, no, David. He's misbehaving constantly. Austin and I have 4 children, and the word no comes out of my mouth more than any other word. I really identified with this book. I think I've read it to several of my children.
Yeah.
This is the one that I believe there's a picture of his naked butt at some point in it, his naked bottom. And Katie banned it at first, but then the parents were like, no, this is a really good book. And then Katie was like, all right, that's how you get the naked bottom exception in this deal. So no David, I believe, is okay in Katie ISD.
It's good to know. Good to know.
Right.
I'll be okay with this book.
You're okay with elementary, for high school? Middle school or
for all? I think
all of them. You're going all the way. This one is okay.
I think naked butt is fine. I think kids see naked butts all the time when they're kids because they all run around naked at their house. I think they know what that looks like. I think it's fine. We could rename it to No Gabe for your household.
Right. Oh my goodness. Right, so this is our last one. Okay. There was a bunch on the list, but this is our last one. My favorite title. This book is gay.
Yeah.
By Juno Dawson. And this is a play on when we were kids. And I think to this day, if you didn't like something, or if you said you didn't like that shirt's gay, or you didn't want your dad told you.
That's what you told me when you made me change shirts before this. You said that's
oh my God, I did no such thing. You can't, but that's what the kids would say. Say this is gay. Now, Austin, there's a new one. I've told you about this. This one actually even offended and shocked me. The kids nowadays, instead of saying that's gay, like you tell them to do something they don't want to do it, they'll be like, do you think I have AIDS? And it's a play on, obviously, my father-in-law was an otolaryngologist, and he practiced back in the 80s in Montrose, the Museum District, which is a place in Houston, was a gay area of town. And they didn't know what HIV was, Austin. They didn't know what AIDS were. They were scared of it. He was down there in the trenches, and he was, to his credit, he was some doctors refused to treat. Yeah. And all they knew it was this disease that was disproportionately killing gay men.
Yep.
And my father-in-law, he was down there treating him, and he was terrified of getting HIV or AIDS. So for our younger listeners out there, no one dies of AIDS anymore. Okay. When Magic Johnson got HIV, he was like the first one to get this expensive medicine. And I remember his medicine at that time was like $20,000 a month. They were like, who could afford that? But no one dies of HIV now. But at that time, they didn't know what it was. And they knew that it was predominantly among gay men.
Yeah.
So the kids nowadays have carried that over. And I don't think they know the history.
Yeah.
But the kids will say, do you think I have AIDS? So
I prefer Ohio being used as a derogatory term. That's funny to me.
Tell me about that. Can you just enlighten, because I don't know. Can you tell me what does Ohio have to do with that?
I guess it's like a flyover state that it has very little significance. And so if someone doesn't like doing something, they're like, oh, that's so Ohio. Or
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're fine with offending Ohio, but not.
Yeah. For instance, if this book is Ohio, you would know not to read it, right?
Yeah. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
The title of this novel, this book is gay, and it's meant to, I think, appeal, be like a catchy title to kids. And this is a quote from the author. Juno Dawson is the author. The book is a manual to all areas of life as an LGBT person. Mm-hmm. All right.
I think that's a rather description of the book, right? Because they're leaving out the Q, they're leaving out the plus, they're leaving out the 2, they're leaving out the A. I think that's exclusion. That's very exclusive, and so for that reason, I think this book should be banned.
Okay. Yeah, that's Austin's. Austin says that book is not inclusive.
Not inclusive
enough. So, Katy School District thinks it's not a good book, and they ban it.
I'm sure for the same reason that I said, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly the same reason. All right. And then the Beaumont School District, that's a town east of Houston, almost to Louisiana. They removed a substitute teacher from reading Anne Frank's diary. I know it's an illustrated adaptation of Anne Frank's diary. I've never read the whole diary. I guess there's sexually explicit things in there. I don't know. So,
I don't know. I'm not remembering. Maybe like when they're in the showers, maybe it shows them unclothed or something. I don't know if this is an illustrated version. I'm just not thinking the written version that would be.
I don't know either. I'm ashamed to say I don't think I've actually read it, or if I've read it, it's been so many years ago. I have visited the house in Amsterdam where she stayed, but they fired the substitute teacher. Apparently there were sexually explicit things in there. Friendswood Christian School. This one's kind of on the list to illustrate a point. They canceled at Scholastic Book Fair. For our listeners who don't know, Scholastic Book Fair is like it's a big business, and they keep some large percentage. If you go to your kid's book fair, Scholastic Book Fair takes some large percentage of the profits. Yeah. And they've said no to Scholastic Book Fair due to the books featuring these LGBTQ plus themes. That's different, Austin, because it's a private Christian school. Yeah. They can make their own rules. It's not public education. So however you feel about these things, there's obviously legal and social implications. The debate continues. Here's my take on it. There probably does need to be some sort of rating system, just like movies and television shows where you're rating things R or TV mature. You put the ratings on the things, and I think you need to put this in the hands of the parents and let the parents decide, and it needs to be a family by family type decision.
Agreed. So. Don't let decisions of what you're intaking in terms of media. Goes back to the video games, goes back to music, goes back to movies. Just don't let schools, do not let the government decide what they're seeing.
I've been your host, Phil Silberman. Austin Black has been my co-host. Like us, follow us wherever you get your podcast. As a friendly reminder, nothing in this show is considered legal advice, and this is all for entertainment purposes only. If you have a legal question, please email us at info@silblawfirm.com, info@silb, S-I-L-B like boy, lawfirm.com, and say you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Thank you for listening. Everybody have a great weekend.
And we'll answer it as long as it's not to Ohio. Thanks, guys.